Now let's get back to what a plant smells. But before we go into what a plant smells, let's talk about what we smell and how we smell. For example, if I take this delicious perfume and I spritz it into the air, I smell it. We all can smell things going in the air. What is happening is that there's a volatile chemical. That's a chemical that's going into the air. It's diffusing into the air, goes into our nose, and we smell it. We can sense what the smell is. It could either be perfume, or it could be garlic, or it could be a number of things that we smell. So what we know is that these molecules now are dissolved in the air, go up into our nose. There they're sensed. We'll talk about how they're sensed, and somehow send a signal to the brain that we translate into a type of smell, whether it be a pleasant smell or an unpleasant smell. Now we know quite a bit about how we smell, thanks to some groundbreaking work by Richard Axel and Linda Buck, for which they got the Nobel Prize in 2004. We actually know exactly what's happening within our nose. Now the mechanism that allows us to smell is that there are receptors up in the nose that can bind these small molecules. What's happening, it's sort of like a lock and a key. Each chemical has its own shape. There are hundreds of different chemicals, each with its own shape. And within this nose, within the cells within our noses, there are receptors that can bind each specific chemical. And when they do, they send a signal, an electric signal to the brain that says this particular chemical was now sensed. So this is different from light. With light, we only need 3 different types of receptors, 4 different types of receptors to see red, green, blue, and black and white light. Here we need hundreds of different receptors to get all of the different smells. So now I want to get back to why I talked so much about membranes. In each of the chemoreceptor cells, in each of the cells in our nose that sense a volatile chemical, there are receptors in their membranes. And each of these receptors is specific for one chemical. So there will be one type of cell that can find a chemical that's found, for example, in garlic. Another one which would find the chemicals that are in mint. Actually, that's several different chemicals. So that we are hundreds of different cells, each specific for one volatile chemical. Once these receptors bind the chemical, they send an electrical signal through the rest of the nervous system up to the brain, and we then translate that into a smell. So again, we have hundreds of unique receptors in the nose. A lock and key mechanism allows each receptor to understand which is the specific chemical that it's binding. That signal is sent to the brain, and we translate that into a smell. Now, most smells are not one chemical. They're a bouquet of smells, which is why we can describe things like wine in so many different ways, or the smell of a fine tomato sauce, the smell of a baby, or the smell of something completely putrid like rotting flesh. But there's a lot of different type of smells, and it's the mixture that gives us the specific smell that we translate it into.